I look at this trailer through the lenses of linguistics and media studies. I've taught students in these two areas for more than 5 years. Let's see how the trailer is made and how its message is conveyed, and let's be as critical as possible, because obviously this trailer is very much subjective. Documentaries aren't as objective as some people would like to think they are. They always have an agenda, and not all viewpoints are allowed to enter. This isn't new, but it's important to be aware of, because documentaries can certainly be more or less objective, while still being biased. Everything is biased, but not to the same degree. The scholar Jonathan Gray had this to say about trailers. A great deal of moviegoing in particular is about expectation, and since trailers play a key role in setting expectations, they become a key contributor to a text's meaning and can be central to an audience's reaction to that text. Obviously, trailers play a huge part in how a movie or documentary is perceived. The trailer to this particular documentary seems very subjective as opposed to objective. We don't hear the other side in the debate. We only see and hear what Meghan and Harry and their supporters have to say. However, the critical voices are represented in the trailer's mise-en-scène and audio. Mise-en-scène is a French word for everything that the viewer is able to see in each frame of a movie or a documentary. It refers to the appearance of the characters, their actions, makeup, clothes, setting, and lighting. Let's look at the mise-en-scène and cinematography of this trailer.
It's really hard to look back on it now and go, what on earth happened?
It starts with close-ups of Harry and Meghan driving, an everyday, relatable activity, allowing the viewer to peek behind the curtain, so to speak. Close-ups bring us close to the main protagonist, in theory at least, and Meghan's posture signifies sadness or tiredness. Already the trailer is portraying the mood that it wants us to have, the same as Harry and Meghan's mood. In terms of audio, we hear deep beats, like heartbeats, signifying something ominous. This is called foreshadowing what's about to follow. The music and the beats are so-called non-diegetic sounds, and non-diegetic sounds define the sounds such as mood music or a narrator's commentary, represented as coming from a source outside the space of the narrative. In contrast, diegetic sound is any voice, musical passage, or sound effect presented as originating from a source within the film's world. The purpose of non-diegetic sounds is always to appeal to our emotions, whether it's anger, sadness, or joy.
You hear that? That is the sound of hearts breaking all around the world.
She's becoming a royal rock star.
While faceless people make positive statements, the music keeps building up to a climax that's clearly going to contradict the positive statements. The point about these people being faceless is important. It shows us that this documentary is about Harry and Meghan and their experience, first and foremost. Even though we might recognize the voices, the opposing side remains anonymous.
And then
everything changed.
We go from a medium long shot to a close-up of Meghan, which has a dramatizing effect, and along with the non-diegetic music, it underlines how fast the positivity presumably vanished. The images and the audio are paraphrasing each other, as it's called. The opposite of paraphrasing is contrapuntal, which is when images and sound don't match. Like a scary movie when you hear a happy song during a frightening scene.
There's a hierarchy of the family. You know, there's leaking, but there's also planting of stories.
This is the point in the trailer where the excuses start. Harry starts by mentioning the hierarchy as if it's new information, but the most important thing to be aware of is the ominous music over a happy image of this balcony scene. This is contrapuntal, happy images, but scary music. The contrapuntal music in this instance can make it seem like the smiles and laughter are merely a facade, and that there's something bad going on behind the scenes. Notice how the sound of the camera is enhanced non-diegetically. It makes it sound like a shot. The perspective makes it look like someone sneaking up behind them, and that they have no way of defending themselves, that they're easy targets. This is the message of the trailer, captured in a single frame. Harry talks about planning stories, but stories that weren't planted were the ones that Meghan told in her interview with Oprah. In this interview, we learned that Meghan thought it was a big problem to learn the national anthem and hymns. We also learned that she had a fairy tale mindset going into the marriage. She said it wasn't like the fairy tales, and she went on comparing herself to the Little Mermaid. These complaints suggest unrealistic expectations, and complaining about having to learn songs can sound rather spoiled or uncalled for in many people's ears. Either way, it's not immediately relatable. In her interview with The Cut, she talked about how giving up her Instagram account was a problem for her, and she criticized the royal protocol for releasing photos. She didn't show any understanding of why the royal family has to do things this way for the sake of safety measures and upholding a certain image. In other words, her statement seemed to suggest that she wasn't very willing to try to adapt to these rules and protocols, most of which she would have known during the year and a half that she and Harry dated before announcing their engagement.
There was a war against Meghan to suit other people's agendas.
The ominous music continues as we see Meghan, who notably is an actress, sit in everyday clothes with a frightened look on her face. This, along with the woman's hyperbolic language, saying there was a war on Meghan to suit, no pun intended, other people's agendas, again underlines the perspective. Meghan's a victim of other people, a term which, again, addresses a faceless group and sounds like an easy way out. The woman invokes the idea of agendas, and with this word, all opposition is categorized as hostile. It can't just be valid criticism. No, it has to be agendas to fit the message that the creators of this documentary wish to convey.
It's about hatred.
Again, we have a peek behind the curtain moment at home with Harry and Meghan. Just like Meghan looked tired in the previous car scene, Harry looks tired here, and we see him putting his hand to his face in slow motion. Slow motion prolongs a certain event or action. Thus, it intensifies the feeling of tiredness, the feeling of wanting to give up.
It's a dirty game.
First, we heard the woman call it agendas, and now Harry says it's a dirty game. There's no introspection as to why William and Catherine face little opposition, while Harry and Meghan face a lot of it. They always shift blame. It's other people's agendas, or it's a dirty game, as Harry claimed. It's always outside influences.
The pain and suffering of women marrying into this institution, this feeding frenzy.
This is probably the most prevalent cause that Harry's consistently tried to blame for the problems they have: misogyny, as if every royal family member, irrespective of gender, isn't scrutinized. And he says it without regard for the fact that Catherine faces little resistance, despite being female, ambitious, and outspoken.
I realized they're never going to protect you.
While the non-diegetic sounds of cameras continue, trying to create an atmosphere of confusion and hostility, we hear yet another excuse: the alleged lack of protection. First hierarchy, then misogyny by implication, and now protection. However, along with Meghan's complaints from the Oprah interview and her interview with The Cut, it sounds more like she didn't fit in, or perhaps more likely, didn't want to fit in. Also, they don't consider the cameras and media attention to be so hostile when it benefits them. They themselves arranged the Oprah interview, and Harry and Meghan have willingly participated in many interviews. But now that certain parts of the media are against them, the media are portrayed as a bad thing. This suggests a lack of consistency.
I was terrified. I didn't want history to repeat itself.
These are so-called intimatization strategies. These strategies bring us close to the characters, supposedly, and are centered on the emotional outbursts of the protagonists. Stylistically, it can have a huge impact on viewers, but in terms of content, it's a cheap trick. I'm sure everyone has cried about things that they didn't feel the need to televise. It's not an argument, it's an emotional attempt to persuade the viewers about who the good guys are, according to the creators of this documentary, of course. This short clip is called alignment. Alignment is about aligning the viewer with the protagonist in terms of cinematography, but also in terms of sympathy. Because of the cinematography, we're literally looking at the world through Harry's eyes.
No one knows the full truth. We know the full truth.
They said the same thing as motivation for doing the interview with Oprah, and look how that turned out. Also, saying that no one knows the truth but them is another rhetorical shortcut, another easy way out without having to deal with the criticism they've faced, and a way of discrediting their quote-unquote enemies without having to take them seriously. Harry's message is delivered in vlog style. Vlogs are designed to bring us close to people, which corresponds to the intimatization and alignment strategies that we've identified. However, emotional strategies, pathos, aren't logical strategies. They're full of effect and drama, but ultimately, they're devoid of actual argumentation. Thanks for tuning in. Before you leave, make sure to like the video and leave a comment. And if you're interested in how conversations and interviews are structured, be sure to subscribe.